Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Our beloved Papa had so much love for Ram Nam that when he heard this name sung anywhere, he would go into ecstasy. That was his love.
శ్రీరామ్ పెట్టు అరలో కూర్చుండి పోరాను పెట్టుంది
With such a love and devotion for Ram, there was no wonder that he could realize oneness with Ram in such a short time. Now we find that in spite of repeating Ram Nam for hours together, unfortunately we don't feel any or even a tinge of ecstatic joy that used to well up his heart in those days. So we wonder how this chanting of Ram Nam, or rather why this chanting of Ram Nam does not give as much joy to us as it gave beloved Papa. The simple reason is that he was very receptive to it, and his mind was purified to a great extent, and his love for Ram was so intense that the very mention of Ram's name opened the floodgates of his heart and made him swim in the ocean of love and joy. We unfortunately have closed our heart so tightly that the gate is kept locked and the love within does not find place to come out. Then what should we do? We can only take refuge in Ram Nam, chant it more and more, and pray to God to give us that intense love and devotion to Him, so that we may have less love for the worldly things. The more our love for God, the more our devotion for God is, the less will be our attraction to worldly things. We are not getting the joy of Ram Nam because our mind is not for the higher values of life, but is attracted by the sensory pleasures of the world. So the downward pull is so strong that we are unable to resist it and succumb to such pull, forgetting for the time being the higher life. When we consider or think of the struggle Mother Prabhupada had passed through, we get frightened and wonder how it is possible for a human being he was chanting Ram Nam day and night, literally, without sleep even. Here, you should also be noted that it was not merely chanting Ram Nam all the 24 hours, but you must consider how much concentration he had while chanting the name. It is a common complaint nowadays that when chanting the name, the devotees feel that the mind is wandering here and there and thinking of all worldly things. So the chanting goes on one side, but at the same time the mind goes on wool gathering, as they say. Then how can the chanting be effective? We cannot expect good results out of such chanting, even though the chanting goes on for hours together, and days together, and years together. But if we can do the chanting as our beloved Papa did, with full concentration, with full our devotion for God, and with no thought of anything of the world, we are sure to get the same results in as short a time as beloved Prabhupada did get. So what is lacking in us is the real love and devotion and concentration. This we have to admit. Many have been saying that they have been chanting Ram for many years with no tangible results. If results are to be seen, we have to see that we have better concentration and we develop more love and devotion for God. Now again the question arises, how to get the concentration and how can we develop more love and devotion for God? Again, it is only by our prayer to God. If we feel that our mind is wandering here and there and are not able to concentrate on God, let us pray to Him, O Lord, make my mind dwell on your feet. Let it not run after the worldly pleasures. Let my love for you be more than my love for anything worldly. Let me remember you constantly. Make me take your name constantly. Like that, keep up the prayer. The prayer itself will bring concentration. Repeat this prayer very often. And during the prayer, because it is addressed to God Himself, at least at that moment, the mind will be taken away from all worldly thoughts, and you will be fully concentrating the mind on God. So this prayer, if repeated very often, will bring better concentration and also increase your love and devotion for God. We cannot also expect immediate results of our sadhana, because the progress in our sadhana depends upon many factors. The progress of a person who is just beginning in his spiritual practices and had no practice in his earlier life, and that only by the grace of God that he was prompted to start the spiritual practice in this life. For him, naturally, the progress will be very slow as he begins from the infant class. He has to learn the alphabets slowly, understand things very slowly, and thus progress. He may appear to progress very slowly, but all the same progress will be there. But another man, or another devotee, we call him, who had been doing spiritual practices in his earlier life and had accumulated a lot to his credit, will begin his sadhana in this birth. He may not have to start from the infant class. He starts from the high school class, and you will find that he progresses much faster. That was the case with our beloved Papa and also our Pujya Mataji. Both of them had done so much in their previous births that they had to do very little in this birth. There are very, very few cases where a spiritual aspirant had realized God as a result of a couple of years sadhana, as in the case of our beloved Prabhupada and also Mataji. So let us at least do the sadhana from wherever we have started, with all love and devotion, and pray to God to make our sadhana intense and love for Him, increase our love and devotion for Him, so that our progress may be fast, and do in this life itself as much as possible, so that at least if we are not able to attain the goal in this birth, at least in the next birth we will be able to start in a better way and attain the goal. It does not mean that we should wait for another birth. We should try our best to see that this is our last birth and we are not forced to take birth again. I use the word forced in the sense that once we attain liberation, we are not bound to take birth, as we will have then finished the effects of all our karmas and nothing will be left to bring us back to the world. But at the same time, we will have the liberty to come back if we choose to do so, to serve humanity, to lead them on the spiritual path to the supreme goal. That will be left to us. It means God will choose us to come down again to lead humanity to the source of all beings. We need not be disappointed that we are not progressed much. We should be satisfied that all of us have been brought on the spiritual path and we are guided by our Master and by the Master's blessings we will surely progress. And that once we have been taken to the spiritual path, it is sure that God has chosen to reveal Himself in our hearts. It will be a question of sooner or later.
Swami, sooner or later?
Right. So we need not be disappointed on that account, but at the same time we should not be satisfied with the progress that we are making. We should try to see that we go faster and faster and reach the goal in this birth itself, leaving no chance for another birth. Now what is the question?
Yeah, the question was that I wanted this birth. I don't want another birth. This what you told me.
It's all right.
I wanted this birth.
You can have the realization in this birth even now itself, provided your aspiration is so intense and fiery that you want nothing else. You should not think of anything else worldly. You want only God. If you feel like that, you will get it this moment itself. But you will find that there are so many latent desires clinging on to you. They will not permit you to lift your soul up. You may not be aware or you may not be conscious what the desires are, how many desires are, what type of desires are lurking in you. It is only because of those desires we are earthbound. The earth pulls us down and not allowing us to fly so high up in the skies. Understand? So until and unless we wash off all our desires, all our vasanas, all the effects of our previous actions, we will not be eligible for God realization. So there is no use hurrying up the matter. That if is found in a tree. It takes its own time to ripen. We cannot go on pressing it. If we go on pressing it and make it ripe soon, it will be useless. It gets rotten. Like that, don't press matters too much. We have to leave nature to do its work in its own time. But at the same time, you must be earnest in your sadhana. You must aspire intensely for God realization.
Swamiji, we have seen so many satsangs, so many ashrams and all, but the thing remarkable here is that there is no partiality for rich and poor. Like we have gone to other satsangs, we have seen that the rich people are welcomed more, and there's a lot of partiality. Somewhere there is the people are partial towards the caste of which the saint is. But we find here everyone of every caste, every country, and all are treated same. No difference is made between rich and poor. It's a very remarkable point in Anandashram.
You are not correct.
No.
We show partiality here also.
At least the saints and everyone, the higher authority.
Because we do things here according to the needs of the persons visiting the ashram and serve them, looking upon them as different forms of God. Now I tell you about partiality or different types of treatment. If you come and your need is a cup of tea, it will be provided to you. If another comes and says his need is a cup of milk, naturally it will be provided to you. Can you call it partiality? You can also call it partiality. You see, equal treatment is not possible in Vyavahara. Equal treatment is only looking upon the one in all. Looking upon them in the equal way means looking upon the one or seeing the one in all. And externally the treatment may differ. You cannot expect to give the same treatment to every form of God. If I go to the Goshala, we feed the cows with grass and oil cakes. But when we go to the Bhojanshala, we give rice and chapatis and curries and all that. There the treatment is different. We are not giving equal treatment. That is why I am saying each one is different from the other and gives treatment according to the need of that form. What do we give? So that's what he wants. Like that, wherever the need is, whatever is the need is, we try to satisfy them. Others, rich people who come here, they don't ask for dhotis and other things. They offer whatever is possible. And that offering is made use of for giving away to the needy ones. So some give here and some take away things from here.
about surrender to God's will?
Please repeat the question.
Can you talk?
Can we talk about surrender to God's will? Surrender.
Talk about it. Surrender to God's will means first to accept God's power as absolute. Absolute means there is only one power, and that is God's power. That power is working everywhere through the innumerable forms He has created. It is by God's will the trees are growing, trees are bearing fruits. It is by God's will men and women or beings, creatures are active. So it is His will that is working everywhere. It is His power that makes the entire universe active. We must be conscious of this. It means we must be conscious that God's power alone is working through all so-called individuals and everywhere in the universe. But unfortunately, what happens is we do certain things and we assume the responsibility of doing those things, whereas the actual power to do those things is coming from God Himself seated in our heart. It means the power that makes our body active is God Himself. We forget that and we assume the sense of doership because of the ego sense. That ego sense has come into being because of ignorance. That ignorance has to be removed by our spiritual practices. The practice is to say that, oh Lord, everything is yourself. Your power alone is absolute. I as a separate being is nothing. You alone are everything. In that way, if we try to accept that God's power is absolute, we will be able to eliminate our ego gradually and become ultimately egoless. A man who is absolutely egoless means a saint who has realized his oneness with God will be able to feel that whatever is done through his body is done by God Himself through that body. Those who are in a state of ignorance will feel that as individuals they are doing it. Because of the sense of doership, they have to suffer the results of their actions, good or bad. This leads them to the chain of birth and death. So if we make our surrender complete and have no sense of doership, we will be completely free from the chain of birth and death. We will attain liberation once for all. Surrender does not merely mean giving up our possessions and relations and all that. It means giving up the sense of I-ness and mine-ness. I-ness and mine-ness comes out of the ego sense. When the ego sense is gradually eradicated, the sense of I-ness and mine-ness will disappear. We'll be able to say everything belongs to God. Everything is God, everything belongs to God. If, say, I possess a lot of property, I should, in the proper way, feel that the property belongs to God. God has entrusted everything to me to manage it as a trustee. And if these things are taken away, I should only feel that God who had entrusted to me has now called them back. We should not feel a tinge of disappointment when things we possess are taken away from us. You have perfect detachment. Is it clear? Any other question about it?
How are we to encourage to practice that practically?
Practical means first you are told that everything is God's power is absolute. You should practice saying that, oh Lord, you are everything. Your power is absolute. That way, bring to your mind very often this truth and tell God, I am nothing, O Lord, you are everything. I am nothing, O Lord, you are everything. Finally, you should also stop using the word I. Only say you are everything, you are doing everything. Like that, the I will gradually be eliminated and you need not even mention that little I. Only the universal I will take its place. It's only practice, practice, practice. Those who are surrendered to God completely means accepted that whatever happens is happening by His will alone. If he gets a telegram today that his property worth, say, $100 million was destroyed by fire, he will not get upset over it. He will be able to say, God's will, God gave me, now God has taken it away. This will be his attitude towards the so-called loss. As it was mentioned a few days ago, King Janaka, who was a philosopher king, was presiding over a court, and news came to him that a part of his city was on fire. He did not get up and run away to save the city. He coolly continued his work. Whereas other people in the audience ran away to save their small things. They had kept them in the city. So, perfect surrender will help us to remain detached and happy and cheerful in all conditions and circumstances. If we are given food, we will be happy. If we are denied food one day, still we will remain happy. We will have no reason to complain. We will be able to say, God willed that I should fast today. God's will, we will be able to have perfect surrender only if we are able to accept the entire creation as God's own manifestation, and also feel that everyone is acting, being prompted by God in each and every form. This is the foundation for perfect surrender to God's will. Means constant remembrance of God and acceptance that the entire creation is God's own form. And it is God who is working through all these forms. If this condition is fulfilled, surrender will be easy.
That means, Swamiji, someone insults you, that is also God. Suppose someone insults you or fights with you, that is also God fighting. Suppose someone quarrels with you,
Who is insulting you?
that God within that person.
Who is that person?
He is the form of Papa.
And why should you be upset over it? If you see him as form of Papa, you will be only happy that Papa has come to you in that form and is correcting you. You will not get upset over it. Surrender disappears from us the moment we forget God. Surrender, attitude of surrender can come to us only if we have God's remembrance, and that everything is the form of God and God is working through everybody. This consciousness has to be maintained constantly. Otherwise we are likely to forget God and make the individuals responsible for act as blame them or praise them for whatever they have done. Often a question is asked, if we surrender to God, how can our daily activities go on? It means those who ask this question feel that by an attitude of surrender, we are supposed to keep quiet, sit quietly in a room without even moving our hands or legs. That is not surrender. That's not the attitude of surrender also. You do all your normal activities and be fully conscious that it is God who is working through you, making you do all such acts. There, the ego has no place.
Swamiji, that means when I read in one book, that is wrong what I read. I read in a book that God's power interferes in your life as much you allow it to be interfered, and if you don't want it to be interfered, then it doesn't interfere. So, but according to what you are saying, that everything is done by Him. So where is that partial part? It's fully done by Him. So that book is wrong. It was written in the book that God's power interferes in your life amount you allow it to be interfered. More than that it won't interfere. Then
it actually means this. Your surrender is 50%. You give some respect to your ego and sometimes feel that I am doing this. Sometimes you feel that, oh, I am nothing. It is God who is doing everything. So at that time surrender is all right. But next moment you give the place to the ego, feel that you are doing it. Until you are able to remove the ego completely, God will not work through you completely. The moment or to the extent you have cleared the ego, that much God will work through you. That is why they say the example of Sri Krishna is playing on the flute. Flute is made of bamboo. The bamboo must be made perfectly hollow. If it is not made 100% hollow, you cannot have the real sound as desired by the player of the flute. So we must become 100% hollow. It means remove our ego completely from us and allow Him to work through us. I think we'll close. Om Shri Ram.